Welcome to our second session of the day, entitled Shifting to Talent-Centered Design with AI." For this session, we're joined by Jason Serrato, VP of Marketing Strategy at Eightfold AI. And without any further delay, Jason, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Ben. Really enjoyed the session with Toby. It's a great conversation. Looking forward to continuing it as we go through these materials. I have some slides to present, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen. And I believe that's working. Correct. All right. So again, everyone, my name is Jason Serrato. I'm the VP of Market Strategy for Eightfold. Carrying on the conversation that just finished, we are a talent intelligence offering in this space. So I really enjoyed the conversation with Toby and some of the discussion points. We are a solution that plays in this space. And we offer a variety of tools on a single talent intelligence platform. So things like CRM and talent marketplace and contingent workforce management, and even skills-based workforce strategies with talent planning, but all of which sit on top of our AI engine that power talent intelligence through a skills-based lens. So what I wanted to talk about today is what does it mean to become a skills-based organization, and how is AI allowing organizations to start on this journey? A little bit about my background. In a former life, I was the head of talent acquisition for a large Fortune 50, and also spent some time as a Gartner analyst, covering talent acquisition technologies and working on HR transformation initiatives. So I've been in this space for over 20 years as a practitioner, as an analyst, and now working with Eightfold. So I want to start the conversation around this change. For everyone on the call, we all know this, we're living this every day, but it's a nice place to start the conversation. As we're coming together as an HR function, we are dealing with designing the future of work in real time together. It's why events like this are so important, so we can come together and ask questions and learn from each other. But really what's been happening is the businesses and the industries we serve have been reinventing themselves as organizations have been pivoting into new areas to serve customers in new ways, or to launch new product lines to generate additional revenue. At the same time, we've been going through digital transformation and digital reinvention, and both of these are leading towards this talent reinvention exercise that we're currently going through as an HR function. These are just a couple of slides from some Gartner research that I really enjoyed when I was on the Gartner team. And the research report on the right-hand side, if you can see it, it's a bit of an eye chart there, but it was titled "Finding Talent in the Digital Talent Ecosystem." And one of the things you can see there is from that graphic, if you look towards the center, in the digital talent ecosystem, talent is at the center. And what we're talking about when we're talking about becoming a skills-based organization really is starting to expand the data that we're using and expand kind of the center of gravity for how we're operating in HR and around talent, where historically we've been doing this with a very org-centric, job-centric view. And we're starting to use the capabilities of AI and all of the data that's available to us to shift to a focus that's really building around talent as we become more human-centric organizations and we continue to compete to acquire talent and work to retain talent. It really is an environment where talent is increasingly at the center. One of the things I point out here, though, is this report that this chart comes from wasn't written recently. That actually was written around 2018. So this isn't a new concept, but part of what I wanted to share with you is why it's been so difficult on this journey, in part because a lot of the tools we've been using have, again, been built around the job and built in service of the org. And we're starting to get new capabilities with things like talent intelligence and AI that allow us to look at broader data built around talent in real time. So when we talk about what this means to have a talent-centered design, it really is examining talent through a deeper lens. If you think about it, we've all been looking from a talent acquisition perspective to examine our job descriptions and to try to figure out, are they accurate? Do they really depict the work that's needed? Are they lagging? Are they telling a story of the way the job was done in the past? And we need to update this for the way the job's going to be done going forward. So as part of that, we've tried to remove this kind of historical look at jobs and really revamp our job descriptions and examine the work and the tasks that are involved, and more importantly, the work and the tasks that are going to be increasingly needed going forward. And when you do that, you start to really get at that skills level. From a talent management perspective, historically we've been focused on performance and promotions, and that doesn't go away. But as we look at the way work is getting done today, and the concept of dynamic teams, and the way we actually carry out addressing the work that's required, we're trying to drive more mobility. And it's not just mobility around a specific career ladder or hierarchy, it's kind of cross-pollination of talent in real time for aligning the skills we have in-house to the work that needs to get done. And as part of that, we've gotten a deeper lens to start to look at proficiency. What does it look like? How do we define it? Who has it? How do we develop it? How do we leverage people that have proficiency in a certain area in our organization to allocate them towards the work, even if it may not reside in the place where they quote unquote sit. So this is how we're starting to look at talent through a deeper lens. From a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, there's been a lot of discussion over the last few years around our job requirements, and are they actual requirements, or have we set up unnecessary barriers for inclusion? So if you think about that, piggybacking on the discussion around job descriptions, we've looked at job requirements, but a level down have also started to get to look at skill requirements. I'm dialing in here from North America, where we've already had 17 states in the United States have shifted towards a skills-based model for how they run their Department of Labor within their states. And increasingly, we're seeing more and more organizations do this. But when you look at skill requirements, you can start to also look at what that skill data tells you and what you learn from that skills data around skill adjacencies, learnability, and capability. And what this does is it opens up the audience for consideration, and expands your ability to consider talent from different areas or from different backgrounds or different career paths. So all of this has impacts on our DE&I efforts. And then from an employee experience perspective, we've always been focused on experience at work. With employee engagement surveys, trying to look at sentiment. And over the last few years with digital transformation, we've been looking at experience with work. Does someone have the right tools they need to get their job done? And how are they able to work potentially in a remote environment or a hybrid environment or entirely mobile environment from a digital perspective? When you get a level deeper down from a skills perspective, we can start to look at, well, what is an individual's experience from work, and what is the meaning they're deriving? Are they actually utilizing their full self in our organization? Do we know everything they're capable of offering? And are we aligning those skills towards meaningful work? Or are we helping them drive a career that's developing skills that they want to emphasize, and not just skills they've collected over time? So as we get to this kind of more skills-based approach, you really are focusing more on the talent in the conversation and being able to look through these lenses at a deeper level. But part of this is because historically, when we've organized around jobs, you put jobs at the center, right? It's kind of starting from the organization out. And when you do this, there are certain inputs that are involved in a process that's built like that. What's the job title, the description, the cost center, the department, the hiring manager, the location, and all of that drives the activity that comes next. But all of that ends up, largely being done through a jobs-based lens. So you're trying to build this exposure of as many people as possible, this audience, to try to fill this job. And by design, it creates some inefficiency, right? Or it creates some rigidity around trying to fill this one specific job. So let's say you're very successful and you build this slate of 100 people, you're only hiring for one opening. What it also does is it perpetuates this feeling of HR as order taker, because a lot of it is waiting for the job to be identified, the requisition to be created, to then go and react to fill the order. It also, again, you're trying to maximize the exposure of this, leads to a lot of mass messaging and building out the biggest audience. But even when you build that audience and you sit down to make a decision, your decisions in large part are framed by that jobs information that started this process. So you focus on things like the title and the level and who did this job before and how does this compare to the job the person had at a previous company. And all of that starts to weigh in on the decision that's being made, and also is ripe to introduce a lot of biases from, the historical points of reference. If you shift that and you start to organize around talent, the inputs are much different. You're looking at skills and capabilities and personas and adjacencies and learnability and work preferences and availability. And then you're shifting the focus of working from inside out to working from outside in. And it's not about maximizing the exposure of a large audience to one opportunity. It's about exposing the talent to as many opportunities in your organization as possible. So this automatically starts to shift the view and the conversation and some of the decisions that result. It creates a more agile way of having this discussion, because it's not about who can we find to fill this one opening. It's about who are all the people in our organization that have to meet this person or have to attend this event to get in front of this audience. And, it starts to allow HR to truly be a talent advisor, advising the hiring team, advising the talent, and it allows for more personalized messages. But again, also when you are having these discussions and going through this exercise, the conversation shifts more for making the best decision for the talent. Where do they fit best in our organization? Who needs to speak to them? And you're focusing on things like the work at hand or the tasks or the skills that the person has, and are not limited by the framework of a specific job. So all of this starts to shift the lens and kind of create a different center of gravity, or at least a more balanced center of gravity. When we talk about becoming a skills-based organization, we're increasingly talking about incorporating and considering the talent and not just the job. And part of that is largely because the jobs are changing very fast. And the job description and the work that's needed may not be as reliable as it has been in the past of what is needed going forward. So you really need to understand the talent that you have and the skills that already exist to have that agility. So what this also allows for is this concept of shifting from jobs and pipelines to one of skills and work and talent portfolios. I mean, if you think about it, pipeline strategies, and I was responsible for managing pipeline strategies. They are specific to a certain role or a certain function or a certain job, and in large part, they're built on a from to conversation or a from to analysis of existing jobs. There's a purpose for that, but it doesn't provide the agility of something like shifting towards a portfolio strategy, where you're not doing this in service of a job, you're doing this in service of an audience of talent, and you're starting to identify them and nurture them and monitor them for a variety of potential futures. And this shifts the conversation of one that discusses from to one that discusses, who, what, when, why, how. And a lot of this is driven by using skills intelligence and an understanding of how skills map to roles and ultimately careers, which is something that, a solution like Eightfold provides from a talent intelligence perspective. What this also allows for is a shifting of this supply and demand equation. When you're doing this and you're looking at a supply of people to jobs, just like the same way a lot of those job details drive the conversation, that kind of analysis is focused on headcount and cost and availability, but it's also a ratio that is, in many cases, one person to one opening. If you change that conversation and you start to shift from analyzing skills to work, the inputs and the conversation is much different. It talks about output and utilization and capability, but it's also a variety of skills for a variety of work. So it creates a variety of possibilities. So no longer is it that one-to-one ratio. It's an increasingly open and agile discussion of how you could potentially utilize your talent for a variety of purposes. To that, it also gives an organization a better understanding of how they're operating, but also the ability to deploy less command and control and more project guidance. So it shifts from one that's very hierarchical on process execution to a model that is more project guidance built around the work that's at hand. So what talent intelligence and skills understanding provides is this ability to optimize work according to the characteristics of what's needed by the business and by the strategy, but also to allow for true recruit, retain, redeploy, redesign, planning, or build, buy, borrow, bot, whichever phrasing you prefer. But once you understand not just the job, but the work and the projects and the tasks at a skill level, you can start to have analysis to say, is this better done, by a full-time employee in the office, or by someone who's working remote or hybrid, or by a contractor? Or are there specific things that we need to address here that are not intellectual property that we want to invest in or we want to develop? Maybe we just outsource this or contract it. Or is it something that is needed but not high value add? Is it something we could potentially automate? So this gives you that understanding and that nimbleness to start to have these discussions once you take it a level down and look through a deeper lens. An example of this is here at Eightfold, we partner with an organization called the Josh Bersin Company. Some of you may know Josh Bersin. He's a well-known industry analyst. And his organization has written a variety of research reports on the Global Workforce Intelligence Project. And we've done reports in different industries in different fields. He's done one on semiconductors and one on commercial packaged goods and one on fintech. This is an example from his healthcare and nursing report. And the Global Workforce Intelligence Project, done by the Josh Bersin Company, supported by data coming from Eightfold, allows them to look at the shortages of talent and staff in different industries and start to understand, well, what is a potential strategy to address this and get out of it? And for this specific example here, I'm showing healthcare and nursing. And through the pandemic, number one, nurses have been overwhelmed and burnt out, and many are leaving the field. Another part about it is it's a workforce that is in high demand because of aging populations. So the demand is increasing even now on the other side of the pandemic. And then besides that, there's a lot of turnover and retention issues around keeping people in the field. So in looking at the shortage in the industry and how this maps to the skills that are available and the available talent using some labor market intelligence, you can start to see that this isn't a problem you're going to be able to recruit your way out of. And even if you do all your best efforts to try to retain your existing talent, it's only going to help address the shortfall to a certain degree. There's a big component of this that could be reskilling people with adjacent skills in adjacent careers or adjacent departments into this nursing field. But a big part of addressing the shortfall is by understanding the skills that are being used and the work that's being done, not just the job description or the job title, potentially starting to redesign the role and redesign the work. Because when this research was done looking at a skills level, one of the things that increasingly became evident was that a lot of individuals that were working in nursing were spending a lot of time doing work that wasn't nursing. And it was this highly administrative, very time-consuming work that was not allowing them to operate at what's referred to as the top of their license. So this creates an understanding of what's actually happening that may provide some strategies to potentially taking this work and creating a different role for a different person or a different team or a different title, but also potentially automating some of this work to take it off the plate to address the demand and the need. So this is just one example of kind of this granularity of skills allows for multiple strategies to addressing the talent needs. From an Eightfold perspective, what we do with talent intelligence is we try to understand skills beyond jobs. So I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call that have been working on identifying their skills taxonomy and creating a skills ontology. And if you have multiple sources of skills data, you may be doing some skills normalization. All of that is required and needed, but a lot of that work is frequently done mapping skills to jobs. With the power of AI and talent intelligence and a platform like Eightfold, we provide an additional visibility of this with what we refer to as a dynamic skills framework, where we add the other side of the conversation, which are skills mapped to people in context. So not only do you have your kind of system of record and managing for how you operate your business today, which in large part is required to be built around jobs, you have this understanding of how that's playing out in your organization in real time from the work and the tasks and the projects. And that's being updated in employee profiles dynamically, and it's being collected from projects and training and events and other data that's coming into the platform. So you get this real-time understanding of what's actually happening mapped to people in context. So I'll give you a couple examples just to help, paint the picture. I'm of a certain age where I remember having to actually know how to get somewhere and remember directions. But then at a certain point, there were tools that came out like MapQuest, for those of you that may know MapQuest, where you're able to print out directions. And I remember driving around with my printout of multiple pages sitting on the passenger seat of my vehicle and following those directions. Well, that was very helpful compared to having to learn yourself and remember all these things. But then this evolved to tools like a TomTom or a Garmin, where it was, a real-time depiction following your GPS location of where you were going, and it was telling you to turn left or turn right. And as this evolved, it may have even told you, different landmarks or places to stop and have lunch along the way. To kind of pull this into the conversation and this explanation of a dynamic skills framework, what's happening now is there are tools like Waze, which some of you may know, where there are many people that are using these tools for driving around, especially when they know where they're going. And part of the benefit of that is because tools like that are gathering intelligence in real time from other drivers that are ahead of you on the path. So even if you know where you're going and you've gone there a million times, they're still plugging it in and following the tool because the tool is looking ahead of where they are on their journey and identifying any potential obstacles or need to reroute or additional learnings along the way. And if you follow me with this analogy, that's what we're doing with our skills intelligence around career pathing and roles and the understanding of industries and rising skills and declining skills. We're tracking this activity in real time and presenting it through our aggregated learning. So what happens is we start to identify skills and then skill clusters and relationships, and we turn these data points into context and understanding and data patterns, and we move beyond keyword matching and semantic understanding to actually understand context. And what this creates is the ability for higher levels of predictive success. So to bring this to an HR conversation, talent and job knowledge become career knowledge, and organizational and industry knowledge become talent intelligence. Another way to see this is, one of our organizations is a large retailer working in the coffee industry. Think about in their world, in their sea of data, how many times the word coffee shows up in their data set. Well, using talent intelligence and AI, especially powered by Eightfold, we're able to understand a skill in context. So in their world, coffee is a skill, but it means something very different if you're a barista serving coffee than if you're a buyer in supply chain purchasing coffee than if you're a software programmer using CoffeeScript. And what our technology does is it doesn't just understand that word, it understands the relationship of that word to the role in context, and then continues to learn as the people in those areas are developing their skills and moving in their journey in the organization. So it's this kind of aggregated learning across people ahead of you on your path to potentially provide higher levels of predictive success. So one of the ways that we offer this is Eightfold Career Planning, and this is a great demonstration of talent-centered design. An individual would come in and they have their profile, and it provides them a visual explanation of all the potential places in an organization that they can go, and it provides an explanation of how their skills map to those various courses. And it's providing, here are people that have taken this path, here's how your skills relate, here's skills you need to develop to move along this journey. But it's not just reading and representing a job hierarchy. It's presenting a mapping of skills that can present, most common career paths or adjacent career paths or alternative career paths. So it's this dynamic understanding of how your skills map to a variety of areas with context. And it also informs, here's where you are now, here's where you're trying to go, and here are all the turns and places and additions you have to make on your journey to get there successfully. So that's just one example. Another example, as I mentioned, with talent planning, this allows the other side of the tool to be used by the enterprise and the organization. So, I just showed you the employee experience and the information that's put into the tool from an employee perspective. This allows the organization, the enterprise view of kind of the skills in their organization, the skills in their industry, and what type of trends they need to account for. But it's a way of what we refer to as skills-based talent planning that allows you to move beyond just headcount and cost to proactively identify and map your future business needs through a skills lens. And it also incorporates the ability to look at a larger data set, so not just your employees, but your applicant network, potentially your contractors. So it gives this total talent perspective. And as mentioned earlier, shifts from this kind of pipeline activity to more of this portfolio of activity, because you're using skills intelligence to design potential roles and paths for the future, but then mapping that to your existing talent to then help nurture them get there. So that way your plan and your talent are more likely to meet at the same point in the future. And this is all being done dynamically in real time through the power of AI. So just to share and kind of give you a way this works, I was listening to Toby in the previous conversation, and he talked about the incorporation of market intelligence. Well, we provide that, and skills intelligence, and we provide that. But the other thing is we're also an operational platform. So we're learning from the activity that's on the tool and how organizations use the tool. And all of this becomes this kind of regenerative engine that powers the recommendations and the insights that come from an understanding of skills and talent intelligence. So over time, we're learning the context of how talent decisions are made in an organization and the recommendations and insights, while still incorporating market intelligence and a broader data set, are increasingly becoming bespoke to the context in which this recommendation or this match is being made. So for example, how an organization evaluates talent. Is it one where they value career velocity and people that move around quickly? Or is it one that values sustainability and tenure and supports more long cycle business relationships, right? We're taking into effect our learning and understanding of that context, in addition to our understanding of the individual and the profile and the skills insights, to then incorporate that as a more comprehensive recommendation and understanding. So all of this comes together in a single AI platform like Eightfold, where you have market insights, you have the AI engine, and you're operating throughout the talent lifecycle, all with that kind of talent-centered design that gives you a more comprehensive view around not just the jobs data that comes from your HR suite or your systems of record, but what's happening with your talent that are carrying out those jobs and are potentially preparing for the jobs in the future that have yet to be identified or have yet to be defined. So I know it's a lot of information. I just wanted to share that with you because there's a lot of organizations that are going down this road of becoming a skills-based organization. In part, you do need to kind of expand the view to incorporate market and industry insights, but also to expand the view to get that real-time understanding of what's happening with your people and your individuals, and not just how you've done this historically with how your jobs are organized and how your job hierarchies are built. You kind of need both sides of the mirror to see the full picture. And that's why I wanted to share kind of this explanation and this walkthrough.
Thank you, Jason, for the excellent walkthrough. I think we've just got about time for one question before we
Sure.
call time the session. So for this first question, Ian asks, what recommendations do you have for measuring skills beyond self-report?
Yeah, so That's one part of it. So there's self-reporting. There's also the ability to infer skills and understand adjacent skills and learnability. There's also the incorporation of that broader data set. So the market insights, the industry insights, people that we've learned from that have similar titles and are on similar careers. It's kind of that Waze example of learning from people that are ahead of you on the path. So part of this is there still is the human in the loop driving their profile and driving their experience, but we're also bringing additional contextual understanding and learning to that process where it's making recommendations for them or providing insights to the organization, combining what we know about that person as well as what we know about people like that person. So for example, if someone had a very limited profile or didn't update their profile, and let's say they just provided, a summary where we can glean 6 skills, right? So they've provided something that shares 6 skills. Well, from that, we know an additional 8 or 9 adjacent skills, right? And then we also know from that look of 14 or 15 skills now, what are other skills that that person would highly likely be capable to learn relatively quickly. So now you have an understanding that's potentially 25 or 30 skills from a very small data set, just because of the aggregated learning and the broader understanding.
That's great. Unfortunately, I think that's all we've got time for on questions. We do have some questions through from the audience that I'll pass on, and I'm sure that you'll be able to answer after the session. So thank you for the time, Jason, and the great presentation and answering those questions.